Okay, welcome to the next video in the Pinball 2.0 kit. We've done most of the top pieces of the playfield. We also did our drop targets. The next thing we're going to do is putting or populating the things on the other side of the playfield, on the bottom side, which would include targets, the sockets for the GI lighting, and these lane switches and things like that. All right. First thing we want to do is we want to make sure we have all of our major assemblies populated, because that basically defines the space claim for of whatever's left is available for our other components. So I mentioned before that we're going to install the drop targets. One key is that the drop target, we want the drop target to be centered on this opening. Okay, if it's too far back, we risk a ball sort of getting stuck there in that little corner in this trough in the front. If it's too far forward, then the drop target doesn't have any place to sit on the ledge. So we're going to aim for this being right in the middle of this opening. All right, so let's flip this over. And the drop target's going to sit on this side. So we're going to change our orientation to come back to this side. Okay, so you can see that there are some marks, some lasered marks for where these holes are supposed to be, but if you look at the measurement of these, you can tell that these marks are almost 1/8 of an inch off. They're skewed relative to the opening of this hole. Okay, so it's unfortunate, but you can't rely on these lasered marks that are on the back side. So you're always going to want to measure and mark it directly. The question is, how do we mark it? All right, so we want to take our drop target and we're going to drop it in, and then we're going to set up a flashlight from the bottom side, and then I'm going to use my phone as a little bit of a mirror here. Okay, you could actually use a real mirror if you have one. And we're looking at the opening, and we're, like I said before, we're trying to line it up so it's right in the middle of the opening, both in and out, and left and right. Okay, so that looks like, to me, that looks like where we want to be. And you can see here that this mark is lining up, but the one on this side doesn't. It's off. Okay. Okay, so our drop target bank is where we want it. So we're going to mark with a pencil these openings, and there's going to be 4 of them. All right, now let's remove the drop target bank. Okay, and we can see that these are relatively close, but these are off enough that it would skew our alignment. Okay, so these are the ones we're going to go with. And like our previous method, I'm going to do a center punch first, and then we'll screw that in. Okay, so we got our center punch. Remember, use ear protection for this because it's very loud. We're going to identify the center and then punch. If you don't like that first hole, you can do it a second time. let's place our drop target back where it should be. I recommend finding a screw bit as long as you can, because you want to try and get in close to the sheet metal when we do this. We find our center punch hole and we just screw it, not all the way. Again, as always, we're just doing it loosely first. Okay. All right, you can tell even though we did it loosely, there's no movement here, and that's part of the reason is that if you tighten it down too much on the first one, it's going to be hard to get this alignment. All right, we're going to tighten those up. Okay, we tightened all those up with a screwdriver. Now let's turn it over. All right, let's come to this side. Okay. Looks good. Okay. And when it's up, you can see it's still on the ledge, and we still have like the tiniest little gap there. So we know that it's fully on the ledge, which is good. All right, and then the ball doesn't get stuck there. Okay. All right. All good. All right, remember when you're testing for this, remember that my rotisserie is on an angle at like 6.5 degrees, which is for a normal game. So when you test for this, make sure your playfield's at an angle when you test for stuck balls. Okay, as we said, we want to populate all of the assemblies on the lower side of the playfield first, and that includes the flipper mechs. If you're starting from scratch the way we are, wiring up the flipper mechs can be one of the most confusing things on a pinball machine. If you're just replacing a vintage one, then you know where the wire should go because you have an example of that. But with this particular case, a lot of people have a lot of trouble with these dual wound coils with the switch, the end of stroke switch. All right, so I'm gonna try and walk you through how this should work, and I've already pre-made my cables here, which you can find on one of the previous videos. Okay, so dual wound coil has two windings. One is the power winding, one is the hold winding. You can tell the difference between the two because of the thickness of the wire. So the thick wire is going to be the power winding. The thin wire is going to be the hold winding. So it's going to have more turns at a lower thickness, which means higher resistance. So when this one is in line and these are in series, you can tell because there's a bar, both bars are on the same side. When these are in series and you have a high resistance here, that means it's going to be low current. And so that is the hold current. The end of stroke switch starts, you can see that it's shorted right here. When this is in its neutral position, the end of stroke switch is shorting out this hold coil like that, which means we're now just on the power coil, which has a larger diameter and fewer turns, which means it's lower resistance, so it's going to be drawing more current. So basically the way this works is that it starts shorted out, which means we're in high current mode, and then when this thing goes all the way down, it hits this switch, opens the switch, and then now we're in a high resistance mode, and now we have low current. All right, that's how that works. All right, so what that means is, and this is the left flipper, and our color codes are purple for the left. What that means is that our power, as you recall from the previous video, our power goes on the bar side, which is here. So power here, and the ground coming, the return line is going to be on the other side, like this, so across the whole combination of coils. So power on the bar side, return on this side. And then the ones we're going to want to short out, we have another set of wires. We're going to wire to the switch. We want to short out the hold coil. And again, the hold coil is the one with the small diameter, which is the higher gauge. And so those are going to go on these two tabs right here. These two tabs down to the switch. Okay, I usually like to start by wiring up the switch. So we're going to go from here to these two tabs, which is the hold coil. And you see I preloaded my wire with solder. I also pre-tend the switch. So we'll get these two like so. And then we'll pull them over and put it on the back side here. And then this one. Okay, so that's the end of stroke switch wired to the hold coil. Right, now we're going to wire our power, and our power, again, the high voltage goes on the bar side, and the return is going to go across the entire coil in series. All right, and this one I'm wiring from the front side. I've preloaded the wire with solder, which is why I'm not using solder when I solder this together, because they're both sides are pre-tinned, the tab and the wire. And I'm just basically reflowing it. Okay. So that's our wired flipper, okay, and that's how it'll look. All right, and this is the left side. All right, I'm gonna do the same on the right side, and then we'll install it on the playfield. Okay, now we're ready to install our flippers. Now you notice that I put blue tape around this bushing here. It's about 1/16 of an inch, and it's because this is the hole for the flippers is much bigger, and we want it to be centered on that hole. Otherwise, it could throw off our alignment with these center posts, or with the slingshot posts, which you might be using for post passing and stuff like that. So you want this alignment to be accurate, and so we want the center to be accurate to this hole. So we added this tape as sort of a buffer to make sure that this is centered on there. All right, the other thing you can see is that there are some holes here that are meant to show you where this should go. They're not perfect, but yeah, they're not perfect, but close enough that we can assume that this is going to be straight across. Same with the one on the right. This is the left flipper, this is the right flipper. And again, blue for the right, purple for the left. You can see that this one was intended to be also straight across, but that's going to interfere with our new trough, so we're going to move it slightly. And the trough would sit something like this, so we're probably going to want to put this like so. All right, and it's not going to affect how the flipper moves, because the flipper gets dialed in and then set screws to set the position. All right, so this could actually be anywhere in here. It would be okay. We want you to give ourselves enough room between these switches and the trough. All right, so that's what we're going to go with. All right, now we're going to screw these down. For these, I don't need to center punch these, because I'm confident that the position is going to be held by that. And then we're just going to screw these in. Try and get it, start it roughly in the center. And we'll do all 4. Okay, once you have all 4 in there, you can go back and start tightening these up. Okay. All right, and we're going to do the same with this one over here. Okay. The last mech we're going to put in for this video, we're going to skip the trough and the auto shooter for right now. But so this will be the last mech we put in for this video. You'll notice this is a vintage version of the saucer kickout. So it's not ideal. We'll probably come up with a different solution for the actual kit, because this one is actually going to be too difficult to try to repro through like send cut send, because you can see it's got these weldments here. So it's a little too complicated of a mech, but we'll figure that out later. But for now, we're going to install this. Also notice that the kick out is angled. It's sort of clocked a little bit, so that when it kicks, it's going to go right in between these 2 thumpers here. So that's the angle of that. And we do have 2 marks here that are in relatively good position. We can see that those line up, and also you can tell that the slot is lining up pretty good with the slot in the mech. We may have to make a little adjustment, like file that down right on the edge there if it starts to touch too much. All right, for this, I'm gonna take this spring off temporarily. Don't want to lose that. Save that. That'll give us better access to that screw. And the same thing, we're going to put our screw right on that dot. Not too tight to start with. And the other screw right on that dot. All right, now we can tighten it down. Okay, again, if this is a little tight, which it looks like it might be just slightly tight, we're going to go back in and file just a little bit off of the back side of that edge there to make that a little bit smoother. All right, and then we can put our spring back on here. Let's see. All right. Okay, so that's good to go. All right, that's going to be it for putting the mech assemblies, and the next video we'll look forward to doing our stand-up targets and our lane switches. All right, thank you for watching.